Movie footage used in Waking Snow White is owned entirely by the copyright holders. Waking Snow White makes no claim of ownership and simply uses the footage for purposes of education, commentary, and criticism, as defined by the Fair Use Guidelines in Section 107 of the Copyright Act. Waking Snow White videos are never meant to replace the experience of watching a film. Waking Snow White will always recommend watching the film first to form your own properly informed opinion.
Goonies never say, "Get away from her, you..."
Oh! You got your aliens all over my pirates!
You got your pirates all over my aliens!
Alien pirates? Treasure planets.
Whoa! Hi, I'm Breanna. This is Waking Snow White. Of the four films we most associate with the Disney Renaissance, two of them can be attributed to Disney's dynamic directing duo, or quadruple D as I like to call them, John Musker and Ron Clements. After supplying the mouse with two of its most prominent IPs, one would assume that quadruple D could make just about any film they desired and Disney would happily foot the bill. One would be mistaken. Throughout their directing career, there was one project these creative partners kept pursuing even though the Disney leadership repeatedly shot them down. Whether they were solving a mystery on the Rodin side of Victorian London, or taking a dip with a gorgeous red-headed half-fish woman and her crab, or helping a thief and a monarch in Robin Williams smash the patriarchy, or portraying a classic Greek hero as a bumbling Peter Parker type. All John and Ron really wanted to do was explore space on a pirate ship. Thankfully, in the early 2000s, John Musker and Ron Clements finally got their chance to explore space on a pirate ship. On November 27, 2002, Walt Disney Animation released its 43rd animated film, Treasure Planet. Directed by Clements and Musker and produced by Roy Conley, Treasure Planet was based on the classic adventure story about a ship's voyage to seek out a hidden treasure that is inevitably waylaid by some scurvy pirates, this time re-envisioned as an ambitious space opera. When Clements, an admitted superfan of science fiction, was a child, he dreamt up a concept of buccaneers and buried gold and all the old romance retold in a galaxy-spanning setting. In 1985, while they were still in production of The Black Cauldron, Clements presented his idea for Treasure Planet to Disney, but it was rejected, so he then pitched The Great Mouse Detective. A shell game shuffle of directors and producers ensued until fellow animator John Musker was made a co-director as well, launching Quadruple D, a friendship that endures to this day almost 40 years later. Even with their string of successes, Clements and Musker never forgot about their pirate space adventure idea. In fact, they pitched Treasure Planet to Disney a grand total of 3 times over 7 years. This is how I imagine it felt for all involved parties.
Right.
Thanks to the success of Aladdin and a plea from Roy E. Disney to Jeffrey Katzenberg, Musker and Clements were able to renegotiate with the mouse in 1995, coming to a verbal agreement that they could pursue their passion project after production on Hercules was completed. And then Katzenberg left Disney for DreamWorks, so Quadruple D once more had to ask Michael Eisner to please let them make their dream film. Basically,
Hi!
Oh. Finally, following the release of Hercules in 1997, Clements and Musker officially began production on Treasure Planet. Why were the Disney higher-ups so reluctant to give the green light to their most proven team of directors? Quadruple D pitched Treasure Planet while they were smack in the middle of the Renaissance, a time when Disney Animation was firing on all cylinders, and Treasure Planet was not like any of the Renaissance films. Katzenberg offered a number of suggestions to even make it more like Renaissance films, such as...
So again, Jeffrey said, why don't you take it and make it Romeo and Juliet in space,
I'm a very quiet, a very, very introverted person. I had never, ever certainly blown up around Jeffrey. It was totally uncharacteristic. But when he said, what about Romeo and Juliet in space? I said, every one of these things doesn't have to be Romeo and Juliet.
It wasn't like any film they were making at the time, but likewise Treasure Island was hardly new territory for Disney, or Hollywood really. Robert Louis Stevenson's adventure novel has been adapted to screen numerous times, and there are two characters who must be present for it to truly be Treasure Island: our young male protagonist Jim Hawkins, and the most famous pirate antagonist of all time, Long John Silver, though in Treasure Planet, he's just John Silver.
Get it? Silver? Because he's a cyborg?
Much like Scrooge in A Christmas Carol and Dracula of Bram Stoker fame, Jim and Silver are roles that have seen many portrayals and iterations over the years. The earliest adaptation was a 1920 silent film from Paramount that is sadly considered lost. It featured Lon Chaney, the legendary man of 1,000 faces, as Billy Bones. Playing Long John Silver was Charles Ogle, a silent film actor who was the first to play Frankenstein's monster on film. And the very first on-screen Jim Hawkins was played by a then 20-year-old silent film actress named Shirley Mason.
Let's go, girl.
1934's Treasure Island, this one from MGM, actually influenced Treasure Planet somewhat. Silver's design was heavily inspired by Wallace Beery, who played Long John Silver for director Victor Fleming, who 5 years later would direct Gone with the Wind and The Wizard of Oz. As if the 1934 version wasn't stacked enough, it starred Jackie Cooper as Jim Hawkins and Lionel Barrymore as Billy Bones.
What does that have to do with Treasure Planet? Admittedly, not a lot, I just found it really cool.
1950's Treasure Island is the film most think of when they hear the title, Treasure Island. It was the first adaptation filmed in color, and it was the very first fully live-action film Disney ever produced. It starred future Peter Pan Bobby Driscoll as Jim Hawkins, and featured a legendary performance by Robert Newton as Long John Silver, which, I'm not exaggerating when I say, has single-handedly defined pop culture's perception of pirates ever since.
And I say there'll be no killing till I gives the word.
When Talk Like a Pirate Day rolls around on September 19th, we owe a debt to Robert Newton for every single R-M-A-T.
Moving right along, in 1996, the Muppets delivered unto the world the finest pirate movie of all time, IMO, the aptly named Muppet Treasure Island, with Tim Curry stepping into the role of Long John Silver and Kevin Bishop beautifully hitting those high notes as Jim Hawkins.
And I know this life I'm living can't be my destiny.
Without a gorgeous selection of Muppets to fill out their cast, Quadruple D set out to make their versions of Jim and Silver more complex than any of the prior adaptations, updated with moral shades of grey for a modern, more cynical audience. First, we meet young Jim.
Traditionally, Jim is portrayed as a stalwart hero, an audience surrogate for the world of seafaring and piracy.
The book briefly features Jim's mother, as well as his father, who, spoiler alert for a book that's over 140 years old, passes on 3 chapters in. In 1950's Treasure Island, his mother is mentioned once. This film famously featured an entirely male cast, but it's more than Muppet Treasure Island, where she is never alluded to or even spoken of. Instead, Jim is given a never-seen deceased father, and thus the trait of daddy worship. Treasure Planet offered several departures for the Jim Hawkins character. Instead of a clean-cut kid with daddy worship, we get a troubled teen with daddy issues, and his mother is a fully realized character. Initially, Quadruple D had imagined Jim as the conventionally heroic sort. It was legendary storyman Joe Ranft, rest in peace, who suggested the bad boy persona that inevitably became Treasure Planet's Jim Hawkins.
Surly teen Jim is not the first Jim variant the audience meets, though.
The film opens with little Jim reading about pirates, up way past his bedtime. The scene successfully doles out the required exposition about Captain Flint and his so-called loot of 1,000 worlds. The late great Tony J., he of Frollo fame, briefly cameos as the book's narrator.
And then, gathering up their spoils, vanished without a trace.
That information, critical for later plot purposes, is not as important as the emotional through line that is established here, the relationship between Jim and his mother Sarah. It is intentional that the audience sees them interact when he is still a small child, an active and curious dreamer who is absolutely adorable. Look at that face! His interactions with his mom are so authentic, it absolutely feels like a real moment between a mother and her little boy. By opening the film with such a tender and warm moment, the audience first sees Jim as Sarah sees him, an image that looms over their later interactions, which are stark and jarring in comparison. With a flawless match cut, Jim is suddenly a teenager, complete with dark baggy clothes and a bad haircut. I do appreciate that the dorky little braid in the back evokes the 18th century adolescent male low pony while complying with the film's aesthetics. During the film's most famous set piece, featured prominently in just about every trailer, Jim drops some absolutely sick tricks on his glider, while the audience's ears are graced with an absolutely sick musical score. The thrilling music that elevated this scene was provided by the film's composer, James Newton Howard. Howard was the go-to music man for Disney in the early 2000s, serving as the composer for both Dinosaur and Atlantis: The Lost Empire prior to Treasure Planet. He is likely most known for composing the scores for all 5 Hunger Games films, but in my humble opinion, Howard's finest contribution to cinema was the 2003 Peter Pan soundtrack, some of the most gorgeous music ever put to celluloid. Disney themselves even sampled it for Disney World's Year of a Million Dreams campaign.
Morning.
Morning. Morning.
He does excellent work here in Treasure Planet, expertly conducting an epic and timeless score. The opening strings over the film's celestial title card just slap, the Celtic influence perfectly underscores the more emotional scenes, and the recurring horn motif makes the audience feel just as triumphant as Jim during the big action set pieces. The glorious music eventually fades out as Jim's adrenaline rush is cut short with the arrival of the Popo. Thanks to these literal RoboCops, exposition ensues. Jim is frequently in trouble to the extent where he's on probation and could well be on his way to juvie. Sadly, his relationship with his mother has also taken a turn. The warmth and sweetness he once shared with her is all but gone, and they, and their inn, just look tired. The old Benbow Inn looks downright miserable, with stormy gray skies looming overhead and a muted color palette that coats every scene set there, while foreshadowing the figurative storm about to sweep through their lives. The foreboding, downbeat setting symbolizes the state of Sarah and Jim's relationship. Turbulent and worn. Their outward appearance further conveys their plight. Jim's got a constant shadow around his eyes and a pronounced scar on his cheek, while Sarah's hair is stringy and unkempt. She wears disheveled clothes and has pronounced lines under her eyes. Her appearance reflects the stress she's under, as she is solely responsible for keeping her business afloat and trying to raise a troubled teenage boy. By the way, Pleiades, Jim's middle name mentioned by his mother twice, is the name of a star cluster that's part of the constellation of Taurus, also called the Seven Sisters. I found that mildly interesting. Sarah spends the majority of her screen time uncertain about how to fix her son and longing for a time when he was innocent and happy.
And it's a big bowl of Zarellian jelly worms for the big boy. Oh, that's so adorable at that age.
So preoccupied with this easier version of him that she cannot see the man he is trying to grow into.
I'm at the end of my rope, and when I talk to him, he's like a stranger to me.
She clearly doesn't mean to hurt Jim, and it's obvious how much she loves him, but Jim and his behavior, though not at all helpful, are not solely responsible for the strained relationship with his mother. She's inadvertently contributing as well. Sarah was voiced by Laurie Metcalf, a stalwart Hollywood character actor best known for playing Aunt Jackie on the long-running sitcoms Roseanne and The Connors. In my own personal opinion, her most iconic role will always be, spoilers for Scream 2 coming in 3, 2, 1, you've been warned, Billy's mother! She is certainly no stranger to playing mothers, and she's had a long relationship voicing moms for the mouse. Here in Treasure Planet, she perfectly captures the spectrum of emotions Sarah goes through over the course of the film's first act. From the warm, playful bond she shares with Jim when he is little, to the exasperation and desperation she feels as her teenage son acts out, Metcalf more than adequately portrays a struggling single mother. Sarah was animated by Jared Beckstrand, thus far his only outing as a supervising animator, though he has worked consistently as an animator from The Hunchback of Notre Dame to The Princess and the Frog. Jim and Sarah's whole world is set ablaze, literally, with the arrival of Billy Bones, another Treasure Island regular. Both the harbinger and the catalyst of everything to come, Billy makes an impact as soon as he appears on the dock of the Benbow Inn.
But they'll have to pray it from old Billy Bones' cold, dead fingers.
Billy was the final acting role for the late Patrick McGoohan, an esteemed Irish-American actor who appeared appeared in Braveheart alongside John Smith himself, Mel Gibson. His elder salamander frame was animated by Nancy Beeman, who had previously animated the Fates and Hercules. A lot of the Hercules crowd worked on this movie, you'll soon learn. Billy's screen time is brief but effective. McGowan lends him an excellent deep rasp of a voice that makes the famous "beware" line eerie and creepy.
The cyborg. Beware the cyborg.
Even though "beware the cyborg" does not hit nearly as hard as
Beware the one-legged man!
With the arrival of some shadowy ne'er-do-wells, Jim exhibits his quick thinking as he single-handedly saves his mom and family friend Dr. Doppler from a fiery fate, and unknowingly keeps the map away from the yet-to-be-revealed cutthroats. That silhouette sure looks awfully distinctive, though. The intelligence his mother alluded to earlier is further shown when he alone is able to unlock the mysterious map.
It's Treasure Planet.
And just like that, this film earns its title as Jim and Delbert conspire to claim Flint's trove.
Go, Delbert! Go, Delbert!
After some tag team convincing of Sarah, they arrive at the spaceport with Dr. Doppler playing the role of awkward uncle, although Delbert's spacesuit seems to amuse Jim more than embarrass him. Max Goof he is not. Soon they are aboard the RLS Legacy, note the subtle tribute to Robert Louis Stevenson. There they meet the first officer, Mr. Arrow, who is as straight as a... you know.
It doesn't surprise me in the slightest that he had previously been played by Sam Eagle.
He offers a stiff upper lip flavor of British to contrast the cheek of his captain, an excellent banter partner for her, and a good foil for the other more colorful characters to play off of. He was voiced by the late Roscoe Lee Brown, who had previously provided the voice for Francis in Oliver and Company, and was animated by T. Daniel Hofstede, who was a supervising animator for heaps of side characters, but notably was the supervising animator for the Emperor and Mulan. If one needs to animate a character who holds themselves with dignity and poise, look no further than T. Daniel Hofstede. After a few by-the-book lines of mistaken identity, Mr. Arrow announces the arrival of Captain Amelia, who does not suffer fools and literally swoops onto the scene with all the demeanor of glass ceiling. I don't know her.
Besides Jim, no character from Treasure Planet has as much of a fan following as Captain Amelia.
She frequently finds herself the subject of fan arts and cosplays. It's not super surprising why. Her dialogue is razor sharp and witty, she commands every scene she's in, and does not stutter once, even though she is often the only woman in a scene filled with men. Her strength is clear even during her vulnerable moments. She manages to keep herself together when her friend is killed, and when the latter half of the film leaves her injured, she still exudes authority and leads those around her.
Captain Amelia, I would argue, winds up helping Jim almost as much as Silver.
Trusting him with critical tasks such as securing the lifelines, keeping the map safe, scouting the area when they initially land on Treasure Planet, trusting Jim's plan to save them from Treasure Planet, and ultimately getting him into that prestigious academy. She's a bad boss babe through and through, and does not sacrifice her career even though she ends the film with a partner and a family. A big reason why she's great is because she was voiced by Emma Thompson, who you may know from... everything. Thompson, herself an accomplished writer, worked with Quadruple D to make Amelia's dialogue what it is in the final film.
To mule and blabber about a treasure map in front of this particular crew demonstrates a level of ineptitude that borders on the imbecilic, and I mean that in a very caring way.
Her supervising animator was Ken Stewart Duncan, who's kind of a babe expert at this point, as he also animated Megara and Hercules and Jane and Tarzan. He also animated Thomas and Pocahontas, who was voiced by Christian Bale, so I would count him as a babe too. Almost immediately, we get some scathing rom-com banter between Doppler and Amelia, though neither know they're in a rom-com yet, before Jim is unceremoniously cast off to work as a cabin boy in the galley.
Mr. Silver?
With an ominous whistle, a little over 20 minutes into the film, the audience finally meets John Silver, the ship's cook who just so happens to be a cyborg.
Cyborg?
You suspicious, Jim?
Just before I left, I met this old guy who was looking for a cyborg buddy of his.
Beware the cyborg.
What was that old salamander's name?
Billy Bones.
Oh yeah, Bones. Billy Bones?
Yeah, Jimbo be suspicious. As soon as the audience sees Silver for the first time, there's a feeling of discomfort, and yet one can't help but be charmed by him all the same. He's easygoing, charismatic, and draws all the attention in every scene he is in. A hand-drawn CG hybrid character, Silver's animation is fluid and lively, especially on display as he whips up his famous Bonzabees stew.
There was an argument to be made in favor of the film's CG elements, its Silver Silver's arm.
Its cell shading blends almost seamlessly with the hand-drawn body, and it's marvelously complex to watch. In the cooking scene alone, it's a hand, a cleaver, kitchen shears, egg-cracking claws, a freaking blowtorch, a buzzsaw, then later it acts as his cutlass, a bazooka, and a literal firearm.
His arm is a steampunk Swiss Army knife.
His other arm is quite gentle for his little alien pet, Morph. Morphy just narrowly avoids falling into the cute character for the kids category, as he justifies his presence by serving as a plot device that successfully creates conflict in the film's latter half. Morph works best when he's, morphing.
Some of my favorite Morph moments.
You little squid. Keep an eye on this pup.
My issue with Morph is that he is very cartoony. He stands apart from the cast even more than the CG characters and never fully jibes with this world's aesthetics. Still, for a pink amorphous blob, he's cute and fun, and I'm ultimately not offended by his presence. He was animated by Michael Show, who animated the Muses in Hercules, and voiced by Dane Davis, one of the film's sound engineers, who, in the year 2000, won the Academy Award for sound effects editing with his work on The Matrix.
Captain Amelia and the little pink blob were both voiced by Oscar winners.
Silver has the good graces to excuse Jim from his duties for the time being so that the young lad can go above deck to observe his first launch. Soon they are sailing through space, complete with an Orcus Galacticus money shot. It's not all smooth sailing, though, as Jim is quickly put to work and just as quickly runs afoul of his totally trustworthy and not at all sketchy new crewmates, with Mr. Scroop possibly being the most sketch of all. As Jim ticks off sarcasm on his bad boy teen bingo card and nearly gets his ass whooped in the process, Silver simultaneously endears himself to Jim, while putting Scroop in his place when he puts a stop to the potential scrap. Because Silver looked out for him, Jim begins to open himself up to the ship's cook.
Your father not the teaching sort.
No, he was more the taking off and never coming back sort.
Not realizing the elder seafarer's ulterior motives, you were rightfully suspicious a few minutes ago, Jim. Silver sees it as an opening and guises his means of keeping an eye on Jim as rigorous mentorship, which leads to a montage set to Treasure Planet's one musical moment.
Treasure Planet was never conceived as a musical, but that doesn't mean it's without music.
John Resnick, he of Goo Goo Dolls fame, was commissioned to write 2 songs for its soundtrack, I'm Still Here and Always Know Where You Are.
It's interesting because John Resnick himself had sort of a little troubled background in ways, so he really brought this sort of Jim quality to the music, and it seemed to fuse between his angst and Jim Hawkins' angst, sort of, and we really liked that sort of marriage of the two things.
I'm Still Here beautifully captures the turmoil of adolescence. Not a child any longer, but certainly not yet an adult, and not quite certain of their place in the world yet. It was a moderately successful pop song in the US, charting on Billboard's top 10 for several weeks. The accompanying visuals inform the audience of Jim's growing relationship with Silver. The seasoned cook observes what a quick and capable learner his cabin boy is, and the young teen feels more and more fond of the elder seafarer. Also this. Just this. The audience also becomes privy to Jim's few memories of his father, which are understandably heartbreaking and perfectly underscored by the lyrics of I'm Still Here. Not much is revealed about Jim's father, but from what he remembers, his dad was absent even when he was present. The emotional gut punch occurs when we hit the bridge. The mounting music builds as little Jim stumbles after his departing father, finally reaching its crescendo as Jim reaches out at the end of the dock for the parental love denied to him. Is this an homage to The Little Mermaid? Am I crazy? Disney is no stranger to having characters with deceased parents as their protagonists. The implications are usually glossed over, or it's the main point of telling the story at all. Regarding Jim, it was a huge departure to explore a character who was abandoned by their parent and the fallout that kind of trauma can have on an adolescent. Jim spends the film seeking the approval and affirmation he has been denied his whole life. first by his father and unintentionally by his mother, which he believes he has found in his friendship with Silver. Oh my gosh, I knew I wasn't crazy. See? It's an overt homage to Little Mermaid. Y'all thought I was nuts, didn't you? Don't deny it. I could smell your skepticism through the screen. Y'all were thinking, the feet coming down the stairs is a bit of a stretch, Bree, don't you think? But look at this. Look, there's absolutely no way to refute this, is there? Who looks crazy now, huh? What were we talking about? By giving Jim these pre-existing abandonment and trust issues, it makes Silver's inevitable betrayal cut even deeper and gives good reason why the teenage cabin boy behaves coldly towards the pirate from the mutiny forward. But let's not get ahead of ourselves. First, let us dwell on this lovely quiet moment between Jim and Silver where they discuss dreams and aspirations and their cost.
Sometimes plans go astray.
Silver's shifty eyes imply that he's trying to prepare Jim for the imminent mutiny, but that statement also foreshadows his own plans later going astray. He is being completely honest and real with Jim, though, when he says,
You give up a few things, chasing a dream.
Then these bros' lovely bro moment is rudely interrupted by a star going supernova.
I hate it when that happens.
The supernova sequence is a thrilling action set piece, successfully adapting the classic ship caught in a storm trope for the celestial setting. It features several lovely character beats for most of our mains, especially the slightly risque Freudian slip from Delbert.
Well, I have a lot of help to offer astronomically.
And this moment deserves a mention just for being awesome. The exciting scene ends with both a triumph and a tragedy. Mr. Arrow's death at the claws of Mr. Scroop is shocking and pulls no punches. That last scream. Haunting. The cherry on top is that Scroop pins the fatal fall on Jim. So rude. Throughout the film's first half, Jim feels guilt for things not necessarily his doing. So understandably, he wants to shut down after Mr. Arrow's death, but a certain cyborg won't hear of it.
Silver's subsequent talk with him is the most important scene in Treasure Planet.
You got the makings of greatness in you, but you gotta take the helm and chart your own course. Stick to it, no matter the squalls. And when the time comes, you get the chance to really test the cut of your sails and show what you're made of. Well, I hope I'm there, catching some of the light coming off you that day.
There are those who might try to simplify this scene, suggesting that adolescent men specifically need a male role model in their lives, and that Silver becomes like a surrogate father to Jim.
I don't think of him as particularly fatherly. Fatherly implies that Jim ought to emulate his example.
Silver is a teacher, ultimately, an unbiased individual who sees his student as he is, not as he was, like a parent might be prone to do. The cathartic conversation between Jim and Silver falls almost exactly at the film's halfway mark, and it is a true turning point for both characters. Visually expressed for the remainder of the film as Jim ditches his dark, bulky jacket, the weight literally gone from his shoulders.
Playing Long John Silver would be the role of a lifetime for many actors. There's just a minefield of motivations associated with the character.
He's a veritable actor's playground, so Quadruple D needed to cast someone who was game to play. Enter acclaimed stage actor, the late Brian Murray. Born in South Africa, Murray was a legendary theater actor and director, inducted into the American Theater Hall of Fame in 2004, as well as a recipient of 3 Tony Award nominations, receiving his first for the role of Rosencrantz in the 1967 Broadway production of Rosencrantz and Guildenstern Are Dead. His vocal performance as Silver was a highlight of the film and exactly what it needed to be. Exuberant and charming one moment, a quiet malice the next, positively bombastic when he descends into villainy, sincere and tender during his emotional scenes with Jim, all the while serving unapologetic pirate from beginning to end, doing Robert Newton proud.
We can both walk away from this rich as kings.
In turn, Jim's own vocal performance was almost as nuanced and spot on as Murray's.
I screwed up! For 2 seconds, I thought that maybe I could do something right, but
Jim's voice came courtesy of Rian Johnson regular and Christopher Nolan favorite, Joseph Gordon-Levitt. He was 17 when he began his work on Treasure Planet, possibly in the midst of filming teen all-timer 10 Things I Hate About You. So he was perfectly suited for the role of an angst-ridden teenage boy. John Ripa was Jim's supervising animator, and he was no stranger to animating adolescents, as he also served as the supervising animator for both versions of Young Tarzan. Eventually, he would go on to develop the story as well as co-direct Raya and the Last Dragon. The morning comes and Jim experiences a double-fisted rude awakening in the form of Mr. Snuff's farts and Morph absconding with one of his boots. His game with Morph is fun, as well as foreshadowy, and sets up Treasure Planet's version of another famous Treasure Island moment. From the depths of the perp barrel, Jim learns that this particular crew are in fact violent pirates with intentions to mutiny and claim Flint's treasure for themselves.
I hate it when that happens.
After learning that Silver orchestrated everything and that he was just a mere pawn, Jim manages to choke down his feelings of utter and unforgivable betrayal, quickly adjusts to this horrid new reality, and thinks on his feet to escape the ship. Look at him stab Silver in the leg just the night before he was nuzzling his forehead into that man's belly. Thanks to Jim, Silver is briefly incapacitated, so the team can warn Captain Amelia and Dr. Doppler about the crew's impending treachery. Of course, that means the pirates, no longer concerned about discovery, move their timeline up slightly, take the armory, and strike their colors. We're in a full-on pirate movie now, y'all. That's an awesome shot right there. Good golly. Deep Canvas, the program developed to create the jungles in Tarzan, was employed here to build the RLS Legacy and render those incredible starfields. Just like actors on a practical movie set, the animators could have the camera follow characters through the ship and create shadows automatically as the light sources changed.
We also really developed the idea of the virtual set. It's an actual constructed set, like our ship, for instance. It's a 3D set, but it's been fully painted to look like a painting. And then we can move our camera freely within that set, and that was a huge plus for us. It opened up all kinds of avenues for staging shots. I mean, just cinematography possibilities that we never had before.
It's pretty cool, and it was obviously super useful during the scenes when our main protagonists are running through the bowels of the ship.
Do some of the CG elements stick out like a sore thumb? Yes.
There are times when the ships look like an early 2000s CD-ROM cutscene, and some of the CG backgrounds never quite gel with the hand-drawn characters. That said, there is some ridiculously pretty imagery in Treasure Planet that likely would not have been attainable without some assistance from the computer, so for the most part, the digital painting techniques did bring to life the vast world Quadruple D envisioned. Jim and co make it to the Longboats Bay and engage in some laser shootout shenanigans. Dr. Doppler even gets a chance to show his own mettle, while Jim is forced to engage in some shenanigans of the schoolyard Pirates of the Caribbean variety. Poor Morphy is torn between loyalty to Silver and his fondness for Jim as the two men try to coerce the map away from him. This is one of the few scenes that Levitt and Murray recorded their vocals together so that they could ad-lib off of each other.
Bring it here! Morph, come here!
Come here, boy!
Morph over here! Come here, boy!
Jim eventually retrieves the map and makes his getaway. Silver, meanwhile, does not take the opportunity to shoot Jim when he has a clear shot. There are many personas John Silver dons over the course of the film. The one the audience sees the most is the charming, easygoing cook. Then there's the scheming pirate who keeps his machinations close to the chest. The fearsome cutthroat who can quell a vicious crew. But then there's the John Silver around Jim Hawkins. Around Jim, he is open and encouraging and finds fulfillment during the time he teaches the young lad, an opportunity to pass on his hard-earned knowledge. When he loses Jim's trust, it's plain on his face that it bothers him greatly. To animate such a complex character, Quadruple D turned to none other than Glen Keane. Keane is one of the most respected animators in film history, capable of drafting complex animation performances with a pencil and some paper.
If animators could win acting awards, Glen Keane would be Meryl Streep.
Ariel, the Beast, Aladdin, Pocahontas, Tarzan all became Disney icons. All of them were his doing. His work with John Silver is nothing short of exceptional. Keane has plenty of experience with physically imposing characters, so Silver's substantial weight is felt in each of his scenes, and yet he still moves so fluidly. Check how he tucks his shirt in during his introductory scene. That is the work of a master animator right there. During his screen time, the audience feels the conflict within Silver as he fights his affection for Jim. him. His reaction when confronted with physical affection is hilarious. Silver would ultimately serve as Keane's final performance as a supervising animator for Disney. Appropriately, the character feels like a culmination of Keane's work. Those who teeter on the line of moral ambiguity with striking physical features and dynamic bodily movement. While Keane handled the hand-drawn aspects of Silver, his cyborg arm and leg were animated by CGI lead animator Eric Daniels. Daniels would go on to work on most of Disney Animation's future CG films, but most impressively, he was the hair animation lead on Tangled. With both animators working together, Silver is the standout character of Treasure Planet, just as Quadruple D had intended. And that is part 1 of Treasure Planet, y'all. Part 2 is coming soon, I promise. I'm trying things a little bit differently this time around. Instead of the long documentary like I did with Lion King, I am doing it in segments. Do you like it being divided in half, or do you prefer the longer documentary style? Let me know in the comments. Thank you so much for watching. Please consider liking and subscribing if you like what you see, and I'll see y'all real soon.